I'm still on the English channel, correct, Jesse? Yes.
Yes, currently you are.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So after you or after we give the instructions, I will switch to the Spanish channel. Okay.
Okay, great. And good morning to everyone who's joining us now. It looks like we have attendees starting to enter. You can ask any questions you have in the Q&A, and then the directions on your screen are to choose your preferred language. You must either choose English or Spanish, and that will allow you to hear the presentation in your preferred language.
Buenos días a todos los participantes. Pueden hacer ustedes las preguntas que deseen en la sección de preguntas y respuestas, y ustedes también pueden seleccionar su preferencia en el lenguaje. La presentación del webinar va a ser también interpretado en español y las instrucciones las tienen enfrente suya. Si quiere escuchar la presentación en español, vaya a la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione español. Dentro de las opciones de interpretación, el botón de interpretación tiene este aspecto. Es abajo de la pantalla de interpretación.
And again, any questions, you can use the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. A few people have asked, if you look at the slide, the interpretation button, it almost looks like a globe. You should be able to click that, and it'll come up with the choices for either English or Spanish, and you just select which one you prefer. And Tom, just let me know whenever you want to get started. I figure we can give people a few more minutes to get on.
I'm ready whenever. Just let me know when I should start.
You want me to get going, Jessica?
Sure.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome. My name is Ed Gresco. I am the director of CSCA Voice Local 100A Child Care Programs. For those of you that don't know me, my wife and I operated a group family child care here in Albany, New York for over 20 years. And I became involved with Voice right from the very beginning. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Tom Copeland, who is the nationally recognized expert in family child care. I've known Tom for at least 20 years, probably longer. He's done a lot of workshops for us here in New York State, and he's nationally known. He has done many workshops across the country also. He's always been our go-to person here at CSCA, and when we had a question that we needed answered, and to the point where maybe we were even being pests at some time, but that's all right. Tom was always there and came up with an answer for us. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tom. And again, welcome everybody. This is a brighter day in childcare with the stabilization grants out there. And Tom will tell you all about it.
Great, thanks, Ed. Good morning, everybody. I'm coming to you from my home office in St. Paul, Minnesota. A cloudy, cool autumn morning. So we're going to be talking about the tax implications of these stabilization grants. As I'm going along, please feel free to ask your question under the Q&A section. I'll be monitoring that throughout, and I'll be answering questions as we go along. This session is being recorded, and you'll also have access to a copy of the PowerPoint slides later, either through the CCR in our network or through the CSEA Union. This is simple, what we're going to talk about. What are the benefits of these stabilization grants, and what are the tax consequences? We're going to try to keep it simple. If you have questions after listening to this, I'm happy to try to answer your question, whether it has to do with the stabilization grants or any other aspect on the business side of family childcare. I'm a trainer, author, advocate for the business side of family childcare. I've been an attorney working in this area for many, many years. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Feel free to contact me with questions. I don't charge anything for trying to answer them. Your question about the business side of family childcare might be answered on my website, tomcopelandblog.com, where I've posted hundreds of articles on all aspects of the business side of family childcare, including several articles on stabilization grants. I posted one yesterday with more detailed explanation about how to pay yourself, which I will talk about in a minute. But I wrote an extensive article about that on my website yesterday. I'm also on Facebook. Every time I post an article on my website, it will appear on my Facebook page. And you can ask me questions on Facebook. I'm not your tax preparer. I'm not providing you with individual professional help. All right, so this is all good news. New York has received millions of dollars for these child care stabilization grants. It was a federal program administered through the states, millions of dollars. The purpose of these grants is to provide financial relief to help you cover the business costs associated with COVID and to help stabilize your program, meaning to keep you in business so that you can continue to provide care going forward during this very stressful financial crisis. These grants represent a substantial financial benefit. It's not a loan, it's a grant. You don't have to pay it back. If you're a child care provider, you want to apply now. Apply now. The deadline to apply is November 30th, but it's a firm deadline. There's no reason to wait later. Don't put it off. For details about how to apply and a lot of additional information on the OCFS website, here is the main link to that website. You're eligible for these grants as long as you're licensed, registered, or legally exempt. Now, legally exempt is a narrow definition. It means your program is affiliated with a church or a school-age program, and you're set up with an enrollment agency. It's not someone who is doing childcare in their home and just caring for one child. Yes, sometimes that's called legally exempt, but for purposes of the grant, that provider is not eligible. Must be licensed or registered as of March 11th of this year. You're still eligible even if you don't currently have any children enrolled in your program. It's not based on how much money you made last year or how much money you're making this year. That is irrelevant. How much will you get? It's a lot of money. If you're a family childcare provider, you can expect to get about an average of $19,000. And if you're in Westchester or Long Island, it's going to be more than that on average. If you're group family childcare, you can expect to get an average of about $38,000. This is a lot of money. You'll be paid in monthly payments over 6 months. And you'll start getting the money within about 30 days or faster of when your application is approved. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you'll get the money. You'll report as income the money you get this year. And then when you get some additional money next year, you'll report that income next year. What can these grants be used for? Paying yourself, paying employees, rent, mortgage payment, utilities of all kinds, insurance, homeowners insurance, liability insurance, facility maintenance and improvements, minor improvements, COVID supplies, equipment, general operating expenses, other goods and services necessary to maintain or resume operation, mental health support for you, children, families in your care, professional development. Got a question, is this information the same for child care centers? Yes, although the amount of money you're going to get is more than if you're a family child care provider. So now we want to talk about the concept of paying yourself, which causes a lot of confusion. You can use part or all of the grant money to take for yourself. And once you take it for yourself, you can use it for whatever you want. You can put that money into your own retirement, take a vacation, create an emergency fund, make a major home improvement. You can do anything with the money, even though it doesn't meet the categories of expenses we just identified, because once you take it for yourself, it's yours to do what you want. Now, the question then comes up, well, how do you pay yourself? To pay yourself, it seems to me there's one of three ways. First, if you have more than one bank account, transfer the money from one bank account to another. It doesn't matter if it's a checking or savings account. It doesn't matter if it's your personal or business account. If you're transferring the money, then make a note when you make the transaction that this is money to pay yourself. Just simply say, pay yourself, pay myself stabilization money. Or write a check to yourself and put in the memo line, pay myself stabilization grant. Or if you don't have two bank accounts, you could leave the money in the same bank account that you got it and make a note in your check register on a separate piece of paper, paying myself stabilization grant. That's it. This may sound very simple, but it is. Some providers have a hard time believing that you can just take this money for yourself and do whatever you want with it. But it's true, you can. Question, is there a cap on how much you can pay yourself? No, you can pay yourself with 100% of this money. Each month when you get it, you can just take it all for yourself if you want. Question, can you pay property tax? No, the list of allowed expenses do not include property tax. However, once you pay yourself, now you can pay the property tax out of the money that you first gave yourself. If you are a corporation, or if you are a child care center, then you as an individual are being treated as an employee. And before the grants, the corporation paid you a salary, they did withholding taxes and so on. With this grant, the corporation can still pay you more, pay you a higher salary. Or if you're the director of a center, you can pay yourself more with this money. If you do, it would still go through payroll if you're a corporation, meaning they would still withhold payroll taxes from your wages. So you wouldn't get the full amount. But as we'll see, if you're self-employed and paying yourself, you're still going to have to pay taxes on it. So there's no difference whether you're a home or a center in this regard. When you pay yourself, you're not reporting that as income again. As I'll mention in a few minutes, the grant you receive here is taxable income. So if you got $19,000, you're going to show that as income. If you gave all the $19,000 to yourself, that's not income again. You're not going to pay taxes on it again. It's not double taxes. Question, if I take a salary, can I still take money from the grant? Yes, but it's still going to be treated as more salary. You can't pay yourself, get paid as a salary, and then they get this grant on the side. No, it's all going to come through as salary. Question, so you can open a new account and keep money in it? Yes, yes, I didn't list that as an option. So you only have one bank account. You can open up a new bank account and then transfer the money into that. Yes. Question, can you use part of the money for yourself and the rest for daycare expenses? Yes, and I'm going to show an example for that. Question, can you pay your full monthly mortgage payment, use the money for the full mortgage payment, or only a percentage that's used for your child care business? And what if your property taxes are included in your mortgage payment? So that's a good question. The language in the website for New York just says mortgage payment. It doesn't clarify that any further. So if your property tax is included with your mortgage payment, then yes, you can use this money that would also cover your property tax. What about the question, can we use 100% of the mortgage payment, or the business portion, your time space percentage of the mortgage payment? New York also does not clarify that. In my opinion, it should only be your time space percent, because that's the business portion. In my opinion, the same answer for utilities, the business portion, or homeowners insurance, the business portion, or supplies, minor improvements. In my opinion, it's always the business portion, because that's the intent of the grant. Now, the problem, just so people understand, is if your mortgage payment is $1,000 and your time and space percent is 30%, 30% of that is $300. And that's what you could use the grant money for. You're always entitled to claim the business portion of mortgage loan interest, but you're not entitled to take the time space percentage of the principal payment. Instead, you're claiming expenses associated with the value of the house when you depreciate your home. So the tax issue is a little bit different. You're not taking the business portion of the principal payment from each monthly payment, but the grant seems to allow you to do that. Question, if you're taking the money to pay yourself, what happens if you get audited at the end of the stabilization grant period? In my opinion, if you do one of those three ways of paying yourself, that's all you need in the case of an audit. I can't think of any other way to show that you use the money to pay yourself. If you're a group family in an S corporation, can you still pay yourself? Yes. If you're incorporated and are treated as an employee, then you just pay yourself or the corporation pays you more as an employee. If you're a group family child care provider and are not a corporation, you're treated as if you're self-employed, and again, you can just pay yourself. Question. I understand that Form 1099 will be given for the grant. That is true. New York is intending to give out a Form 1099 at the end of the year that you will receive a copy that will say how much you got in the grant. And that will also be sent to the IRS. If you somehow don't get a 1099 form for some reason, you still must report it as income. If you're a nonprofit organization, you will not get a 1099. If you're a school-based program, you will not get a 1099. Then the further question is, my application had my Social Security number on it, but I would like it to be changed to an EIN. Is that possible? I don't know that you can change it on your application form. I don't know New York's rules about that. You'll have to talk to OCFS. Okay, I'm going to come back to a couple of these questions. My sister and I are equal partners in our group family childcare, but the money was sent to her because the license is in her name. If I take some of the money to pay myself, how do I claim the money for myself? Well, this is a little tricky. Your sister got the money. Your sister must report that as income. But now I'm pausing here. This is a little more complicated question. And so, Jeanette, if you wouldn't mind, send me an email. Give me a call. Actually, be better to give me a call because it's a little tricky and I can explain how you can make sure you get your share of the money. So please give me a call on that. Can you use this money to pay off a loan? Once you pay yourself, the answer is yes. Can you pay the employer's share of FICA Social Security? If you have an employee and are paying an employee, you can use the money to pay their payroll taxes. Yes. All right. How do I determine how much to pay myself? Any amount you want. If we are a corporation, can I pay myself a check aside from my regular pay this way to avoid paying taxes? No, no, no. You're always going to have to pay taxes on this money. Question about how do I document that I'm using the grant towards payroll? Well, just indicate, you know, if you're using this money to replace existing payroll, you're paying out, I'll just make up a number, you're paying out $5,000 a month in payroll. You've been doing that for a long time. Now you're going to use this grant money to replace that $5,000, and now the grant money is going to the $5,000 for payroll, and now you freed up that previous $5,000 to do something else with it. Okay, you can do that. So you simply need to say, when you're making payroll, that this is grant money. You just need to write it out and say, I'm transferring this money, here it is, the transfer, it's payroll, or you've transferred it all into a different account and now you're paying payroll out of that account. You just need to keep your own internal records to show that a certain amount of money that came from the grant is now going towards payroll. You have until 2023 to spend the money. That is true, but you're reporting it as income in the year you receive it. So you got $10,000 in 2021, that's $10,000 of income this year. You got $9,000 of income in 2022, that's $9,000 of income. Now you may have spent it on something for your business in 2021, 2022, or 2023. In the year you actually spent it on something for your business, that's the year you claim the expense for that item. Question, if I'm an LLC, can I pay myself with the payroll? If you're a single person LLC, the answer is yes, because you are treated tax-wise just as if you were self-employed. Someone said they could change their Social Security number to an EIN on the grant website. Aha, so that's what you want to do. Can I use a grant to buy a computer or some iPads? Yes. So now I'm going to go on a little bit further, and then we'll get back to some of these questions. Let's go through a little bit further explanation of these other categories of things you can spend the money on. Rent, mortgage payment, we've talked about that. Utilities, including phone and Wi-Fi, business liability and homeowners insurance. And as I've said, apply the time-space percentage to these items, except for liability insurance, which you can deduct 100%. Facility, maintenance, and improvement. You can use the grant money for minor renovations, and they list playground equipment, a bathroom renovation, replacing carpets, repairs. but you cannot use it for major renovations, that is construction or remodeling that involves removing load-bearing walls or making extensive alterations. Now, unfortunately, they don't clarify beyond this. What is a minor renovation versus what is a major renovation? So the questions become, what about a fence? Well, I would think that's a minor renovation. What about a patio? I think that's also minor. What about basement remodeling? That's tougher. Now, if you're not removing load-bearing walls, but if you're insulating, sheetrock, electricity, plumbing, is that an extensive alteration? Or is that a minor renovation? That's a tough call. Kitchen countertops, I think clearly are minor renovation. If you're replacing 1 or 2 windows, putting in an egress window, that's a minor renovation. But what if you're replacing every window in your home? I don't know. That could be considered a major renovation. Doors, I think, would be considered minor. Goods and services. You can use the grant money for food. Now, what if you're on the food program and getting reimbursed for that food? Can you still use the grant money for food? Yes, I think you can. It's not double dipping. You can use it for equipment, materials for play, learning activities, childcare software such as KidCare. If you're participating in a shared services program and are spending money there. Cleaning services, hiring somebody to come in and clean your home. The grant application says transportation. Well, does that mean you can use it to buy a new van? I'm not so sure. Could be, maybe. Mental health supports. You can use it for mental health, counseling, and other support for you, your staff, the children in your program. Family engagement materials for children and their parents. Now, I've indicated a couple times, I'm not sure. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other questions that you might come up with that you will wonder, can I use the grant money for it? And it's possible that New York will not clarify and you won't get a clear answer from the state. So, what are you going to do? If you're not sure, if you're nervous about using the money for some purpose, the simple answer is just pay yourself with that money. And then you can turn around and use it for this thing that you're worried about. So you're remodeling the basement. Is that a minor or a major improvement? You're not sure. So just take the money, pay yourself, and then you can spend it on the basement remodeling. So that's the backup plan, is to just pay yourself if you're not certain. Again, there's a little more information on the state's website about these expense categories. And that's where you could perhaps get a little more guidance. You don't need to submit receipts to OCFS on how you spent the money. However, you should keep your own records in case you're audited by the state. I think the chances that you'll be audited by the state are very remote. But you need to keep these records for 5 years after the end of the grant period. meaning 5 years after 2023. Normally, as a self-employed person, you're keeping your business records for 3 years. So this is a longer period of time to keep records on how you spent the money. If you're just paying yourself, then the record keeping is simple. You're just keeping that record that shows that says this was for myself. All right. Let me catch up on questions. As a nonprofit, why won't you receive a 1099? I don't know. That's the state's decision that they're not going to do that. If you spend all the money on expenses, do you have to claim it as income? Yes, but that's the next section I'm going to go into and explain this in more detail. Okay, I'm going to cover these expenses. My partner is also my assistant, and he owns 40% of the corporation. I own 60%. How do we divide the money? If you're a corporation, see, this is the tricky part here. If you're a corporation, you're not a partner. So if you're a partnership, that's one thing. If you're a corporation, then the corporation can pay out the grant to each of you 60-40. If you're a true partnership, the partnership can split the money 60-40 to pay each of you. And then each of you, regardless, would have to report the income for the amount that you individually receive. Question about withholding taxes, I'm going to talk about that. Here's a question. I'm a registered provider, been approved for the grant. You're looking to go into group because of the shortage. How would this affect your grant? Are you going to get more from the grant once you become a group provider? I don't know. I don't know. So I'm sorry, you'll have to ask the state. I'm going to answer some of these questions. The grant states that there are specific areas on how the grant should be spent, which had to be checked off on the application. So if you're audited and you choose to pay yourself, how do you show a breakdown of specific portions of money used for your business? You don't. If you are using all of the money to pay yourself, you're not using it to spend on anything else, even if you checked off the boxes. It doesn't really matter what you checked off on the application. So once you pay yourself, and if you paid yourself all of it, you don't show that you spent it on anything else. Once you do pay yourself, you can turn around and buy stuff for your business, but that spending is not part of this stabilization grant in terms of having to show that. Can the grant be used to pay another credit card? No, but you can use it to pay yourself and then do it. Can the money be used to help pay a teacher's student loan? Well, yes, in this way. You can use it to increase the pay of the teacher or give the teacher a bonus. And that'll have to go through payroll taxes and withholding. Then the teacher can then use that to pay their loan. Question, I'm doing business as a DBA, doing business as, you have a business name. That doesn't change anything. So what? That doesn't affect it. You're still getting the money. You still have to follow all the same rules. So there's no difference. I run payroll through Paycheck. Do I just need an internal document stating that the grant money was applied? Yes. Paycheck just pulls payroll from my bank account, same bank account where the grant money was deposited. Yes. So paycheck is just taking money out of this account and applying it to payroll. Fine. And some of the money in that account is for the stabilization grant. Some of the money in that account, I presume, is other revenue. So yes, you just need your internal documents saying each week, each month, so much of this payroll came out of the stabilization grant amount. Your internal documents are all you need. I use a time-space percentage for my business. I use the downstairs half of the house for daycare. Can I take an extra room upstairs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for storage? Yes. So this question has to do with calculating your time and space percent. If you have a room that's exclusively used for your business, that means you never, ever use it personal. So the storage of toys and equipment can only be used for your business. Having an exclusive use room will increase your time and space percentage. So you do want to take into account that extra room upstairs. Yes. Can I use some expenses that I had prior to receiving the grant? Yes, I should have put this on the screen. You can go back to January of this year and use expenses back to January. If I pay myself with a grant, can I still pay myself from the business account? Yes. Can I use it for a driveway? Yes. Window replacements. Well, as I said, a couple window replacements, I don't see a problem with that. Yes. The entire home, all the windows replaced, I'm not so sure. But again, you can just pay yourself with that. A porch. If you're adding a porch, then no, you can't use it for adding a porch. But again, you can first pay yourself. If you're just using it for replacing windows in just the porch, then I would think, yes, you could use the money directly for that. What about a new roof? That one is a close call. And so I would pay yourself first. What about siding? Is that a minor improvement or a major improvement? That's a close call, in my opinion. So I would pay yourself first. Replacing just a sliding glass door, that's clearly allowed, directly used for the grant. Porch rails, that's a repair. Yes, you can use it with the grant money. Hot water heater, yes. Fixing a front step in need of repair, yes. My wraparound porch is extremely deteriorated. Can I fix it? If you're repairing it, the answer is yes. Can you use it to pay the payment on your present van? Well, to me, that's yes, I would think so, because you can use it for transportation. What about indoor or outdoor security cameras? Clearly, yes, you could use the money for that. Do I have to keep receipts for every spending? You always want to keep receipts for every spending, even before this stabilization grant. Keep receipts for everything. Maybe you're going to use some of this money for items that we've been talking about, in which case you need the receipts for a potential audit on the stabilization grant. But you always need receipts for an IRS audit and to be able to claim everything you're entitled to claim on your tax return. So yes, save receipts for everything. Question: the government is set to run out of money next week. That's true. Will that mean the rest of the grant will be forfeited? No. If the government is shut down, all that means is it's possible, and that's the federal government we're talking about, not the state government. And the state government is the one that has the money. But it might be that the federal government stops giving the money to the state. And if in that case, it would just mean that it would be postponed about getting money. So once the government reopens, you will start getting the money again. You're not going to lose the money. It's not going to be forfeited. It's always going to be there, whether you get it now or delayed. All right, it's the questions I'm going to be answering. To make the current driveway larger, yes. And use it for staff bonuses for Christmas, yes. Can I pay myself as much as I want, even the total of the monthly amount? Yes. What about training in graduate college courses? I think the answer is yes. I hesitate a little bit, so I would pay yourself first. Can you pay yourself and still take fees from parents? Yes. Parents pay you the same amount, and now you're going to pay yourself all this money. You can do that. If you want, you can say parents get a discount and then pay yourself the money and parents get a discount. You could do that if you want. Question, if this is a 1099-G, that's a type of a 1099, can I put the grant on the 1040? No, I don't see where the grant fits on Schedule C. It fits on Schedule C as other income. So no matter what, there's been some confusion in previous grants in different states where they got a 1099-G, which implies that this is not business income, that somehow it's personal income on the 1040. I don't know what the Form 1099 is going to look like in New York, but regardless of what it looks like, it's business income on Schedule C or business income on your corporate tax return. You cannot avoid the Social Security tax on this money. If we checked all of the categories in the application, do we have to spend some of it in all of these areas? No. You can spend it however you want. What about a new furnace? I think that's a major improvement. I would pay yourself first. What about a garage door? I think that's a minor improvement. Claim it in 1 year. What about chimney repair? Yes, you can use it. Replacing a fuel oil tank? Yes, you can use it for that. Now, I hope people understand, and I want to say this again, I'm giving you my opinion on how these things can be used. But your safe bet is to just pay yourself, and then there won't be any question about it. I read the money can't be used to build a foundation. That's true. That's construction. That's extensive remodeling, but it can be used to repair a current foundation. Yeah, a repair you can use the grant money for. And use it to pay back the EIDL economic injury disaster loan program. You borrowed money from there. Can you use this money to pay back the loan? Yes, but only after you pay yourself first. Can I put the money into a retirement fund? Yes, after you pay yourself first. Computer and other educational programs for children. Yes. I live in an apartment. Can I pay rent with the grant? Yes, the business portion of the rent. Replacing broken blinds, window shades? Yes. All right. So now let's jump into the tax consequences, because there's been a bunch of questions about this. And then I'll get back to questions. The stabilization grants are income. I've said this before. It's taxable income, no matter what. You're going to get a Form 1099, except for schools and nonprofits. This money is treated as income in the same way as receiving parent tuition, subsidy program payments, food program reimbursements. It's all income. This is also just more income. Now, knowing that, do you still want this grant? Well, yes. Yes. You may end up paying a little more in taxes, but you'll always be financially better off by accepting this grant. How does this work? First, how much in taxes might you owe? Assuming we're self-employed now, you're going to pay about 15% Social Security Medicare taxes, 10 to probably 21% in federal income tax. That depends on your personal family's circumstance. Also, your personal family circumstance will determine how much state income tax you're going to pay, 4 to 8.8%. So if you add all this up, roughly speaking, you're going to owe maybe 30 to 40% in taxes on this grant. That's rough. But it's still, that's okay, because you're always going to have more money left over after you pay these taxes. Do you want more income? People worry about paying more in taxes. Oh, I don't want this grant because my taxes are going to go up. Well, let's look at that. If you got $10,000 from the grant and you are paying 30% tax on it, you're going to owe about $3,000 more in taxes. Oh my. Well, you'll still have $7,000 left over in your pocket. If you got $10,000 and are paying the higher 40% in taxes, that's $4,000 of additional taxes. But again, you'll still have $6,000 to $7,000 left over. Do you still want the $10,000? Of course. Somebody's offering you money. Here's a grant. Take the money. There's little or no record keeping involved, hardly anything you have to do. And in this case, you're going to have $6,000 or $7,000 in your pocket after you paid the taxes. So do not worry about having to pay more in taxes. Just look at how much you're going to have after you pay the taxes. Now, some people worry, well, Tom, this will push me into a higher tax bracket. And that's going to be a problem, because some people think that means they're going to pay higher taxes on all of their income, not just the grant income. And that's not true. Let's say your family is in the 12% federal income tax bracket. That means that a certain amount of money you're paying 12% tax on. And depending on whether you're single or married, that amount could be different. And let's say your income is like $1 below the 12% bracket. So you're not paying any more than 12% on your money. But now you get $20,000 from this grant. And now all of that except the $1 is now in the higher tax bracket of 21%. All this means is that you'll pay 21% tax only on the grant money. But all your other income is still going to be taxed at the lower rate. So the grant might mean you're paying higher taxes because the grant money is now in a higher tax bracket. You're still better off getting the money, but it will not affect the taxes on all the rest of your income. So don't worry about this. Now, there are a few rare situations where it's possible that you might not be better off financially if you get this grant. This grant income may or may not disqualify you from receiving Section 8 housing vouchers, Medicaid, health insurance credits, or college scholarship. I don't want to try to answer these questions because they can be a little bit complicated. So you should contact Section 8, Medicaid, and so on, or ask the union or ask the CCR&R if they have more information about this to see whether or not, because I can't answer that question, this grant will hurt you if you're participating in these other programs. Now let me take you through 3 examples of the tax consequences. Now we're finally answering the question of what are the tax consequences of receiving this grant money. Let's say you got $15,000, and let's just treat it as if you got it all in 1 year. First situation, you take all of the money to pay yourself. You're going to pay taxes on this. If you're paying taxes at the 30% rate, you're going to owe about $4,500 in taxes, and you'll have $10,500 left over in your pocket at the end of the year. If you're in the higher 40% bracket, you're paying $6,000 in additional taxes, and you have $9,000 left over in your pocket. That's option 1. Option 2, you get the $15,000, but now you spend it on items used by your business and your family. You buy some shared toys, a computer, a television, a swing set, business and personal. You can only use the grant money for the business portion of these items. Your business portion is your time and space percentage. And let's say, just for this example, that it's 35%. So 35% of the $15,000 is $5,250 of expenses that you can deduct, that you can use for the grant money. So that leaves $9,750 left over that you're paying yourself with, because you're not using it for anything else for your business. Well, you're going to pay either 30 or 40% tax on this $9,750, which will leave you either $6,800 or $5,800 left in your pocket. Last option. You use the $15,000 for items exclusively used for your business. food, toys, employee wages, COVID supplies, children's furniture and equipment. 15,000 of income, you're subtracting out 15,000 of expenses that you're using with all this grant money. You don't have any taxable income. You don't owe any taxes, but you have nothing left over in your pocket because you spent it all. So let's review. First example, you keep all the money, you have 9,000 to 10,000 left over in your pocket. Option 2, you spend some of the grant money on business stuff. You have $5,800 or $6,800 left over. Or you spend it all on business stuff, you have nothing left over. So, which is better off financially? Paying yourself or buying items with the grant money? Financially, you're better off using all the money to pay yourself. Now, listen to how I'm going to say this. If you use $1,000 on something exclusively for your business, you're going to pay taxes on the $14,000. If you use the $15,000 for yourself, you're going to pay taxes on the $15,000. But then if you take some of that money and buy $1,000 worth of stuff, you can deduct the $1,000, which will then reduce the $15,000 down to $14,000. In other words, if you're going to spend the money on something for your business, it's going to have the same tax effect if you use the grant money for it or pay yourself first and then use the money for that same business item. Okay, so if you're using it directly with the grant money, you have to keep receipts for 5 years in case you're audited. If you use the grant money to pay yourself and then buy something for your business, you only need to save that receipt for 3 years because it's not used directly with grant money. So tax-wise, it doesn't make a difference. You can still spend the money on your business. So you'll pay more in taxes if you're just using it for yourself and not in turn buying something for your business. You're going to pay more in taxes than buying stuff, but you'll have more left over after you pay the taxes. Now, if you're going to use some or all of this grant money for yourself, you want to plan ahead and set aside some of this money so that you aren't surprised when it comes time to pay your taxes. If you're filing estimated quarterly taxes, the next payment is due January 15th, and then after that, April 15th. So you may want to put in more January 15th towards your taxes. Your tax rate varies, as I said earlier. You'll always owe the 15% Social Security Medicare tax. But depending on your family's circumstance, you may owe a differing amount of federal and state income tax. So it's a minimum to be very conservative. I would set aside 30% of your tax, of the amount you get, to cover your federal and state taxes. How should you spend your grant money? If you want to improve the quality of your program, if there's something you really need for your program, then fine. This is a great opportunity to use this money for those purposes. But don't spend money just because you have it. This is a lot of money. And there could be a great temptation to look around and say, what do I want? Now I have all this money. Let's go buy stuff. No, in my opinion. Why? Well, first of all, if you buy stuff that's personal, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. And so you don't want to spend it all, and you got to save some out for your taxes. If you're going to buy stuff for your business, okay, but do you really need it? Because this could be an opportunity to meet other financial goals that you might not have been able to do so far. That means this could be an opportunity to start funding a retirement plan for yourself, or create an emergency fund, or pay off debt, pay off credit card debt, pay off student loans, and so on. So before you see this as an opportunity to spend money, I would suggest you think about what your financial goals are. And in light of the fact that you have a lot of new money, you may now think you are able to meet some financial goals that you didn't think you could meet before this. I'm a little bit nervous. I hope I don't hear stories of providers who just went out and bought, 5 big screen color TVs, or, a mink coat or some crazy thing, and lost this opportunity to do some financial good for yourself and your own family. The idea of the grant is to stabilize your business, is to keep you in business. And buying a lot of new things is not necessarily something that's needed to stabilize your business. Maybe there are some things. If you do have to repair that deck and fix some broken windows, okay, fine, that certainly makes sense. But I would just urge you to be cautious. Saving money is always financially better off than spending. All right, so let me now try to catch up on questions. What about stuff that was ruined from the recent storm, the leaks and floods? Well, if you're paying out of pocket, or if this is a deductible on your insurance policy, then yes, you can use the money for that. What about a daycare, a classroom that does not have a bathroom? Well, this is a tricky one. So the language referred to bathroom renovation, not adding a bathroom. Adding a bathroom, in my opinion, is a major improvement. Therefore, you can't use the grant money directly for that. However, remember, just pay yourself first, and then you can do it. Can I use it for paid sick leave for upcoming surgery? Well, not directly, but indirectly, yes. Can I put money into my 401k for my retirement? Yes, after paying yourself first. Can I pay an employee if the employee pays her own taxes? Well, let's talk about that. If the employee is paying her own taxes, she's not an employee. An employee is someone who you are treating as an employee, which means you're withholding Social Security and Medicare taxes. You're paying federal and state unemployment tax. You're withholding federal and state income tax. And you have workers' compensation insurance. This is for someone who is helping you care for children. If you're not doing that, you are potentially in big trouble. New York is very, very strict about enforcing workers' compensation rules. So if that person ever gets injured while working for you, you're going to have to pay their entire medical bill, and you're going to have to pay workers' compensation insurance as far back as you had that employee, and there's significant penalties. So it sounds like you're not treating that person properly as an employee. If you have an independent contractor, can you use the money to pay that person? No. Instead, you'd have to pay yourself, and then you could pay that person. But you need to fix that so that that person is properly treated as an employee. It doesn't matter if they're working for you part-time. It doesn't matter if they're only working for you for a month or two in the summer. Any amount of pay to someone who's helping you care for children, that's an employee. The only exception here is if that person is in the business of providing substitute care. They work for other providers. They should have a business name that they register with the state. They should be using their own contract. Otherwise, that's an employee. Can I use it to paint your house? Yes, that's a repair. Can I replace the sheetrock on the wall in the play area because it's old? Yes, that's a repair. Replacing sheetrock in a kitchen? Yes, that's a repair. What happens after 2023 if you don't spend it? I assume you have to give it back. But there's no reason not to spend it because you can simply say that you paid yourself. So if you're coming near the end of 2023 and you haven't spent it on something else, make sure you just say, okay, all the rest of this is paying myself. And then you don't have to worry about it. Then you've spent it. Once you pay yourself, that's considered spending it. New kitchen appliances, yes. Can I get this grant if I'm planning to retire in July 22? I think the answer is yes. I haven't seen anything on the New York website that says differently. So I might have missed that, but I don't think that's a problem. How do legally exempt people apply for the grant? Well, again, you have to be a church-based program or school-age program, and then you just fill out the application. If you're caring for one child in your own home, you're not eligible for this. Can I use it to replace a furnace? I'd say no. Or central air conditioning? I'd say no. Pay yourself first. Can I use it to trim the tree on the playground and use the grant for 100% of this cost? Well, you can use it, the business portion, not 100%. I understand it's on the playground in your front yard, but it is in your front yard. You do get enjoyment out of the tree, the shade and so on. It's not 100% tree because it's in your personal property. Therefore, not 100% of the cost. The time space percentage of the cost is what you want to do. If I use the grant to pay for rent, do I need to write it paid rent stabilization grant? Yeah. If you're using it to pay for rent, then you need to keep your own records to say this amount for rent was coming out of the stabilization grant money. You just need, for any expense of the list of all these expenses, utilities, supplies, rent, all this stuff, you need to keep your own records to show I took $1,000 out of the stabilization grant towards rent, towards supplies, towards whatever. You keep your own records to show that's what you did. Remember, it's a lot easier just to pay yourself, and that's one-time record. When you pay yourself or the staff through payroll, you are not then taxed. Well, let's be clear. The grant is taxable. If you're self-employed, once you get the grant, you're going to pay taxes on it. When you then pay yourself, that's not income again. Because when you got the grant, it was yours. But now you're just identifying it as yours. You're not going to pay taxes on it again. If you are an employee, the corporation gets the grant. The corporation then pays, the corporation reports it as income. The corporation then pays you a salary. Now the corporation can deduct the salary. So now the corporation isn't paying any tax on that because they're wiping it out. But now you as an employee are getting the money, and now you as an employee are paying taxes on it. Question, can you put in a laundry room? If you're adding a room to your home, that's considered construction. So the answer is no, pay yourself first. I've answered that. Plumbing repairs, yes. Air purifier, yes. When you say pay yourself, you mean as payroll? Payroll if you're an employee. And bonus, yes, as an employee, you can use this money to pay a bonus. What's the difference between personal income and business income? It's how it's taxed. Your business income is taxed Social Security, if you're self-employed, about 15% Social Security Medicare tax. Then your business profit is taxed for income taxes. If you're just, so the business tax is the additional Social Security Medicare tax. Your best option financially is to pay yourself. What if I've already spent money to receive on things that needed to be repaired to run my business? And now, after listening to me, can you pay yourself with the future payments you receive? Yes. Yes. Can I buy new furniture? Yes. Can I pay myself hazard pay? I'm the only employee. Can I pay myself $1,000 a week until the money is gone? If you're a family childcare provider and you're self-employed, you're not an employee, but I understand what you're trying to say. You can call what you're paying yourself. If you want to call it hazard pay, you don't have to call it that. You can just say, I'm paying myself. Can you pay yourself $1,000 a week until all the money is gone? Yes. You have until 2023 to spend it. That's true. Can I report my salary on my taxes to spread it out over 2021, 2022, and 2023? No. You're reporting, assume you're self-employed, all right? Self-employed person. You're reporting as income the money you get each year. Whatever you got this year, you have to report as income this year. Whether you call it all your salary or not, it's still income this year. And remember, if you pay yourself, that doesn't have any additional tax consequence. Any money you get next year, you have to report as income next year. If you're not getting any income in 2023, there's nothing to pay yourself. I mean, there's no, you don't get a deduction. There we go. You don't get a deduction for paying yourself. So spreading out when you pay yourself doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You're keeping records, I suppose, to show that, but you don't get a tax deduction when you do it. Are the taxes the same for corporations? No, I'm sorry, I didn't identify all the tax consequences of a corporation. So I'm sorry, no, it's different. Can I pay taxes with the grant? Not directly, but you can indirectly. Wouldn't it be more beneficial to use the money for more business expenses than paying yourself? No. No, that's what I tried to explain. Sure, you could use all the money on business items and wipe out all the income, and you have nothing left over. Okay, you have a lot of stuff. You didn't pay any taxes, but you don't have any money left over in your pocket. When you pay yourself, you pay more in taxes, but you have more money left over. So to me, you want to have money left over. If you really absolutely positively need to spend all of this money on your business, you're just waiting. You just desperately need this money for your business. Okay, but you're not better off financially. I mean, let's see, how can I say that? You don't have more money left over. You avoided taxes, but the goal is not to avoid taxes. The goal is to spend money wisely and make sure you understand that keeping money and paying some additional taxes is a good thing. Somebody says they've heard that some people won't qualify for health insurance credits after taking the grant. That's possible. I don't know for sure. I have not looked at that. If that's the case, then people need to understand that ahead of time. Is the benefit of the grant more or less than the tax credit from the health insurance? And if the grant is more beneficial, does that mean you lose the health insurance and you have to find other health insurance? And if so, that's a problem. Or can you make a little bit more and still qualify for health insurance? And if that's the case, can you say to New York, I only want a little bit more, I don't want all of it? That might be another option. What are your thoughts on the chances that New York will release an expense reporting system in the future for this grant and apply it retroactively, like a budget reporting tool? Well, I don't know if they do this, and they're giving you some help in how to report expenses for purposes of ever being audited. Because remember, the state will never ask for receipts. But maybe, I don't know if you're saying they might ask to fill out a form, an expense reporting system. Are you going to have to submit it back to the state? I don't know. Or is this something you can keep and help you keep better records for yourself? If it's a tool to help yourself budget and keep better records, I say that's great. Question, if I show out of the state, will that be okay? I'm not sure what you're asking. If you're operating outside of the state, if you're licensed in New York, but doing childcare across the border, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know what you're asking about in that situation. After all this information, why would it make sense to spend the money on anything other than just pay yourself? In my opinion, it doesn't make sense to spend it on anything else. You can always spend it on that, but after you pay yourself, to limit all the record keeping and to limit the concern about whether or not you can spend it on that. Because once you pay yourself, it doesn't matter. You can spend it on anything. Somebody has a group daycare. They pay their assistant $40,000 a year. Terrific. Could I say that I paid her with all of the grant? Yes. Yes, you can. Is that better than paying yourself? Well, it's the same thing. You're normally paying $40,000 out of another pot to pay your employee. Now you're taking the $40,000 from the grant and using it to pay your employee. Okay, you're still doing the payroll tax withholding, and they're still reporting income. So now you've freed up that other $40,000 that you were previously paying your employee. Now you can use that other $40,000 for whatever you want. So there's no difference than first paying yourself and then paying the employee. It's all the same thing. Can we use the money for enrichment programs, music, athletic programs? Yes, I think you can. Yes. Can you put it away in a savings account? Yes. So you could pay yourself $20,000 and then just stick it in a savings account and not do anything with it. Just leave it there after you're paying yourself. Yes, you can do that. How do you set up an emergency fund? You want to pick a safe place to put it. A bank savings account, a money market account. Those are very, very safe. You'll earn very little interest, but that's okay because the money is for an emergency. So you could go to your bank and ask about a savings account. Your bank may be able to set you up with what's called a money market account. Or you can just go online and search money market account with an online company. Then you can put in as much or as little as you want into your emergency fund. It's a good idea to have an emergency fund. Question, what about the deadline to use the money if you set up an emergency fund? Well, whenever you get the money, you can decide to pay yourself first. You got to do that first. And if you're paying yourself first with all of the money, then you can put the money into an emergency fund whenever you want. You can put it in there 5 years from now, 10 years from now. There's no deadline for when you can set up or contribute to an emergency fund after you've paid yourself. So let me say a couple other things here. Back to the slide. You want to apply for this money now if you haven't already. It's a lot of money that will help your business, your family, you. This is great. Don't hesitate to use all the grant money to pay yourself. You need to keep records for at least 5 years. Here is my contact information again. Feel free to call me, send me an email. Check out what I've written about these grants on my website. Follow me on Facebook. Question about this person that they were paying doesn't have a social security number, only a TIN number. That's okay. You can still pay them as an employee if they have a TIN number. What if your assistant is your spouse? Well, for purposes of the grant, this doesn't matter. except for one situation you do not want to pay your spouse. The only situation in which you'd want to pay your spouse is if your family has more than $1,000 or so of medical expenses that you pay out of your pocket, which includes health insurance premiums that your spouse may be paying through work. If you're in that situation, you could hire your spouse as your employee and then set up what's called a health savings account. Health reimbursement account, an HRA, also called a medical reimbursement plan. And if you do that, you can recover, you can treat all of your family's medical expenses as a business deduction. And that's the only way you could get medical expenses as a business deduction if you're self-employed. And if you set up your husband as an employee, you don't even have to pay your employee. You just have to fill out the forms treating him like an employee. Now, here's the problem in New York, however. If your spouse, your husband, is working with you caring for kids, you're going to need workers' compensation for him, even if you don't pay him. So, if you're not going to worry about this medical reimbursement plan, then you don't want to pay him. Because if you do pay him, you're going to have to withhold Social Security tax and get workers' compensation insurance. So don't pay him. Think of some other way to reward him. I've written about this on my website, how to deal with the question of whether you should pay your spouse or your own child who's age 18 or older, and another article about paying your own children if they're under age 18. But this really has nothing to do with the stabilization grant, because if you did pay child 18 or over or your spouse, you still have to withhold Social Security tax. So there's no tax savings to do that. Can you use it for mold removal in your basement? Yes, that's a repair. How far back can I claim expenses? I'm hesitating here a little bit. I think the answer is back to January of this year. I know it says this on the, I know the state gives an answer, a clear answer on their website. So I apologize if I get this wrong, but I think it's January of this year. Question, if you opened a childcare in April of this year, are you able to apply for the grant? Unfortunately not. You have to be in business as of March 11th. I think it's the 11th. So April is too late. Now, if you were licensed by March 11th, then you are eligible. It's not when you're caring for children, it's when you get the license or registration that is determining whether you qualify. How do you calculate your time and space percentage? Go onto my website and search time, space, percent. And there's several articles there that describe it, including a link to a calculator where you could put in your hours and put in your space and it'll calculate it for you. Question, can you pay a contractor to do groundwork before placing a storage shed for outdoor toys? Well, if you're building a shed that's going to be permanently attached to the land, and that's what it sounds like if you're doing groundwork, then the answer is no. But pay yourself first, and then you can. When paying myself as an owner, do I do it as a bonus or owner payout? How should I process the payment to myself? Some people use the word draw. Some providers take money out of their bank account monthly as a draw, an owner's draw. The language here is not important. Assuming you're self-employed, well, let's talk about it two ways. If you are self-employed, you're the owner, you're the boss, you can call what you pay yourself a bonus. You can call that if you want. You can call it owner payout if you want. You can call it owner draw if you want. It doesn't matter. It's just taking money that's yours and calling it and labeling it stabilization grant payment to yourself. And you process it to yourself using one of the three ways that I've described. If you're the owner of a corporation, then you can still pay yourself as salary. You can call it bonus or salary, it doesn't matter, because it's going to be treated tax-wise the same. If you give yourself a bonus, you still have to withhold payroll taxes. So you would process it as the owner of a corporation as if you're paying yourself a higher salary. Can I use it to replace my car that was damaged by the flood? Replacing the car, buying a new car. Earlier I said I wasn't sure. I had a question mark about that. You can use it for transportation. Does that mean buying a new car? I don't know. I don't know. And if you are gonna use it to buy a car, you could only use it for the business portion of the car. The business portion of the car is based on the business percentage. How many business miles are you using divided by the number of total miles you're using? So if you drove 2,000 miles for business and 10,000 miles total, that's 20%. So then you could use it for 20%, roughly speaking, of the purchase price of the car. How do you get a copy of these slides? You can get it. It'll be posted later by the union and the R&R network. I'm on my dad's health insurance, but the daycare is in my name. Will that affect him in having health insurance? I don't know. I don't know if his health insurance is based on your income. If it is, then it could have an effect on his health insurance. That I don't know. Question, will the IRS audit self-employed people more, Schedule C, more if you're claiming a whole lot of repairs? So let me answer it this way. This is a lot of additional income. Let's use 20,000 as an example. So if your income over the last 4 or 5 years is roughly the same, okay, maybe you lost, had a lot less income in 2020. Maybe your income is also a little bit lower in 2021, but now you got this $20,000, which is going to show you a lot more income than last year, and maybe a lot more income than any previous 4 or 5 years. Okay, next, if you're using it to buy stuff for your business, let's say you use all 20,000 of it for repairs or supplies. So now 20,000 more of income, 20,000 more of expenses, your profit really isn't changed much because you wiped out all the income. Well, having a much larger expense for repairs or something else more likely trigger an audit. Probably not, because you have more income. Let's see. So I don't think that's an issue. Is the IRS going to audit more? The IRS is auditing less and less and less over the last 3, 4, 5 years. So don't even worry about this as an audit. Now, what if you got the 20,000 but you didn't spend it on any business expenses. And so now your profit is $20,000 more, and now you're going to pay more taxes, as I previously explained. Now, is that a problem in an audit? No. The IRS looks at you and says, oh, you made more money and you're paying more in taxes. We love you. So that's not a problem either. Don't worry about an IRS audit as a result of this grant. Somebody's saying, can we take it out and no taxes? If we're a center, can we simply take it out? Well, you always, whether you're a corporation, a center, group family, family childcare, the grant money is always going to show up on your tax return as income. Maybe you're deducting some of that money, maybe you're deducting all of it, but maybe you're deducting none of it, but it's still income. You're deducting all of it, there's no tax. You're deducting part of it, you're paying some tax. If you're deducting none of it, you're paying more in tax. Question, if I'm using it for parent tuition, how would you claim that expense? You wouldn't. So let's say you're going to give one parent, one family a break. And let's say they're going to pay you, I don't know what, $3,000 between now and the end of the year. That's how much they're going to owe you. But you decide to help them out because they're struggling. So you decide that they don't have to pay you anything. Parent, you're not going to have to pay me anything more for the rest of the year. And that means you won't have to pay me $3,000. What's the tax consequence? This means that you are earning $3,000 less in parent tuition for the year. So you're going to show $3,000 less of income on your tax return for parent fees. And that will reduce your taxable income, reduce how much taxes you're going to owe because you had less income. You are taking the money from the grant and saying 3,000 of that is to offset the money I didn't get from the parent. Okay. Can you deduct that 3,000? No. No. You're just paying yourself, and 3,000 of that is not available to you, let's say, because you're going to put the $3,000 back into the business account. So it's not a deduction. Before COVID, if you gave parent a discount, you don't have to pay me for this week, so you don't have to pay me $250. That was not a deduction. If during COVID you were open and gave parent a discount because they were hurting, still not a deduction. So a deduction, a scholarship, whatever you want to call it, great. If you're doing it, terrific. You're getting less income, but that's the only tax consequence. You can't deduct anything. Can I buy a phone? Yes, you can buy a phone. Can I document my self-payment in the calendar keeper, the red leaf calendar keeper? Yes. Yes, that's a good way to track it. Can you document this weekly? Yes. Can you do it as a lump sum? Yes. Can you do it each time you get paid each month? Yes. It doesn't matter when you pay yourself. I'm in the process of buying another house, which I have some of the down payment. Can I use some of this grant for the down payment? Only if you pay yourself first. You say till 2023, is it January 2023? It's September 2023 that you have to spend it. But if you spend it on all the money now, or even over the next year, doesn't that give you more spending power? Well, if you know you're going to spend it on something for your business, you need a new playground equipment, let's just say. Should you buy it this year or should you buy it next year? If you know you're going to need to spend something, spend it this year to get the tax benefit of the deduction this year, rather than waiting a year to get a deduction. A deduction now is worth more to you than a deduction later. The question about using expenses back in 2020. I'm hesitating. I don't think you can use it. Let's see. I'm thinking you can only use it back to 2021. Now I could be wrong. You know, I'm doubting myself right now. But let's just say, for the purposes of your question, you spent some stuff in 2020. Can you use this money to replace the items you bought in 2020? Well, sort of. I mean, you spent $5,000 on a patio or landscaping driveway repair in 2020. That was a deduction in 2020. It's not a deduction this year. Now, if you want to say, I'm using some of that money, let's assume you can, under the grant rules, and I'm sorry, I don't remember. Let's assume you can use some of this grant money for those expenses back in 2020. Okay, fine. So then you just say, I use $5,000 of this money I got this year for those expenses. And that's what you, if you got audited, that's how you would report it. But tax-wise, it has the same impact as just keeping it for yourself, because you're still going to pay taxes on it now.
Tom,
Yes.
expenses incurred from January 31st, 2020 is approved in New York State.
Thank you so much. I gave you bad information earlier saying it was 2021, January 2020. So, okay, thank you. All right, so that's my answer. There was a deduction back then. You can use the money for that now, but has the same impact as just keeping the money for yourself, because that's what you're really doing. You're just saying, I'm telling you that it was used for that, but I'm still keeping it for myself. And you're still going to pay taxes on it now. Question, before you got the grant, you were getting unemployment. If you're not on unemployment now, when you get the grant, it has no impact on the unemployment benefits you received earlier. If you are on unemployment now, this will affect your ability to get unemployment, continuing to get unemployment now, because it'll probably disqualify you each month that you get this money. Question, I already transferred money to a savings account. Should I put it back into a business account and then write a check to myself? No. Transferring the money, if you're going to say, when I transferred this money, this was paying myself and it went into a savings account, that's fine. You don't have to do anything else. It doesn't need to go into a business account. Can you include childcare expenses for toys bought at the beginning of this year? Yes, you can. If I get a grant for, let's say, $10,000, and my business easily has $10,000 in expenses, does it not make sense to spend it on those expenses instead of paying yourself and paying higher taxes on that money? Well, it doesn't matter. You get the $10,000, and you turn around and spend it on these $10,000 of business expenses. So you're wiping out the 10,000 of the grant. Okay, fine. You're not paying taxes. Option two, you take the 10,000 and you pay yourself. After you pay yourself, you spend the $10,000 on stuff for your business and deduct it. In both cases, you're showing 10,000 of income and 10,000 of expenses. The fact that it went through you first doesn't change anything. So it doesn't matter. Both ways, you end up paying the same amount in taxes, which is zero if you're spending all the money on stuff for your business. I hope that makes sense. How do I pay myself as an LLC? If you're a single person LLC, it's exactly the same as if you're self-employed. Single person LLC, you just pay yourself. What are the financial ramifications for an S corporation? The S corporation would report the, let's say, 10,000 as income. The S corporation then can decide what to do with the money. If they just keep the money, let's see, they either have to pay it out in payroll or business expenses, or they just keep the money as profit. And if they keep the money as profit, then they're going to pay taxes on it. They're going to pay corporate taxes on it, not self-employment taxes. But essentially, it's the same idea. It's still eventually taxable if they keep it. If they pay it out in payroll, they can deduct that. And the people who got the payroll, the employees, they have to report the income and pay taxes on it. Question, if I put money aside in another account for taxes, do I need to label it as paid myself? Or can I just note it as money for taxes? Well, you can't use the grant money directly for taxes. So you'd have to label this set aside money for taxes as payment for myself. You're just putting it in some other account, or just labeling it in your same account and say, that's for your information, that you're not going to spend it, that's for taxes. But it's still considered part of paying yourself. Where do you pay taxes to? If you're self-employed and you're single, you should be filing quarterly estimated taxes. 1040 ES. E is in Elizabeth, S is in Smith. If you're married, it's highly likely that your spouse has enough withheld from his or her paycheck to cover your taxes. If not, your spouse can have more withheld to cover the additional taxes from this grant. And they would handle that through their company's payroll taxes. Can I still charge for childcare? Yeah, you don't have to reduce the amount that parents pay you. Parents can still pay you the full amount. It doesn't matter how much you're making. It doesn't affect how much you're going to get from the grant. When you're a sender, the amount is more. Yes, that's true. So would it look funny to pay yourself everything? That's a good question. Is it going to look funny if you're paying yourself a whole ton of money? Well, can you? Yes. Is it going to look funny? I don't know. You normally, let me just say it this way. You normally pay yourself X thousand a month, 4,000 a month, I don't know what. And now you're paying yourself a lot more than that with the grant. Well, you're freeing up that 4,000 a month for something else that your center could use it for. But paying yourself $24,000 a month, it's only for 6 months, remember. That's a lot. I don't know if that's a problem. I really don't. Sorry. How many kids do you have to get the grant? I don't know that there's a minimum number of kids you have to have. I don't know. Okay, I don't know the formula. As I said earlier, there's an average amount. I assume it's based, I don't know if it's based on enrollment or attendance. I don't know the answer to that. Can you put the money in a business account? Yes, or a personal account. If you owe back taxes, can the IRS take your grant? I don't know. If you are on a payment plan to pay back your back taxes, can they say, oh, you got all this new money, we want some of this money to pay your back taxes? I don't want to guess on that. I don't know. Our daycare is struggling. My son is my assistant. I pay him a weekly stipend, not a salary through a payroll system. Can I use some of the money to give to my son? Only if you pay yourself first, since he's not an employee. So pay yourself first, then you can give money to your son as much as you want.
Tom,
Yep.
we want to make sure that the language is clear. And for the expenses, it's for expenses after January 31st, 2020. We want to make sure nobody includes January 31st.
I appreciate
Okay.
that. I'm sorry. I know you said that earlier, and I just listened to January, and I didn't listen to January 31st. So
It's
starting
after. It's after.
February 1st, 2020.
Yes.
Expenses after that time. Thank you very much. All right, people keep asking questions about paying yourself. And maybe that's something you didn't weren't there at the beginning. So take some or all the money if you want to give to yourself. You just label the money in your checking account or transfer it to another account or write yourself a check and say, this is money for myself. That's it. That's how you pay yourself. It's not a deduction. It's not income again. You're just labeling some of this grant money or all of it for yourself. And that meets the definition of paying yourself. Or you'll see the language personnel costs. That's what this is. You're the personnel person that you can get the money. The grant is taxable income. You may be able to deduct expenses from this when you use it for items for your business. If you use it all for yourself, you're going to pay taxes on all of it. My license is open, but no children. Can it still apply? Yeah, I would apply. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how they define. You're eligible. I don't know how they define how much you would get. If you're getting unemployment, how would it affect your taxes? So when you got unemployment, let's say you got unemployment earlier this year, that's taxable income this year. So you're going to put that down on your personal 1040 form. It's not business income, it's personal income. Now you get a grant. The grant is business income. Does it disqualify you from getting that money you got earlier? Do you have to pay back some of that unemployment? No. The idea is when people get off unemployment, that means now they're earning more money. And that doesn't penalize them for the unemployment benefits they previously received. My assistant gets paid on a 1099 because of not having a social security number, and you pay her $850 a week. My accountant says she cannot be in payroll with a TIN. Well, okay, I could be wrong about not being on payroll with a TIN, but if she can't, it's illegal to pay her as an independent contractor because then she's not entitled to work. If she can't qualify to work, then you can't, if you give her a 1099, you're in trouble and she's in trouble. It sounds like she's not eligible to be working. Give me a call, send me an email, we can talk about that a little bit more. You pay yourself and then make a repair. Can you write off the repair? Yes, you can. After you pay yourself, you can certainly buy stuff for your business. All right, let's just see if we can get to the end here. Can I open up another site for daycare? No, not directly with the money. Can we use this training time for our training hours for our daycare? Is there a certificate to show that we completed this training? I don't know. I don't know if the union or R&R people can help me with that question. I don't know if you're going to get a certificate for this. Can you go back and label money that you deposited into bank account and label it as payment for yourself? Yes. What is the percentage you can pay yourself as much as you want, up to 100%? How does this work if you're paid by the state? No difference than as if you were paid by family. Let's see if I have an unusual question here. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get to every single question here. And John, if there's a question in Spanish that I didn't answer, if you want to tell me what that question was in Spanish, I'll try to answer it. Yeah, there were a couple, but do I have to report the total amount of grant for this year on my taxes, or only what I received till December 31st? You report income in the year you got it. So you got paid in December, that's December's income. You got paid then in January 2022, that's 2022 income. It doesn't matter if you put the money in a business account with a social security number, an EIN, or none of that matters. Business, personal, EIN, social security, doesn't matter what account, what the account was called. Can you explain why you can't purchase another property? Because the rules say you can't use it for construction or major improvements, and buying a new property, that's my interpretation. And if you disagree with me on anything I'm saying here, and it's possible I could be wrong on my answers about what you could use the money for. So you could try to get a clarification from New York State about the answer to your question, or my safe answer is just pay yourself, and then you can buy a new property, you can do whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about it. Does the daycare have to be opened until September 2023? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. So we're just about out of time here. I know I didn't answer every single question. John, if you have one for me, great. yes, you're going to pay taxes in the year you get the money, whether or not you spent it. So if you don't spend the money, you're going to pay taxes on all of it. If you spend some of the money on business items, you're going to pay tax on some of it, and some of it you'll be able to deduct. If you spend the money on everything on business, it's still income, but then you're able to write it all off as an expense and no taxes. But it's always reportable as income on your tax return in the year you get the money. All right. Okay, so last words here. Thanks everybody for listening. Remember, if you have questions, feel free to contact me later. You'll get a copy of this recording. You'll get a copy of the slides so that you can refer to that later. I appreciate all the work you do. This is a big change. It's like, it's not every day. It hasn't happened in the last 40 years where you're getting a huge chunk of money that you're not required to spend it on something. It allows you to spend it on a bunch of things to improve your business, to keep you in business, so that you can continue to provide good care going forward. So this is fantastic. This is a terrific thing. If you haven't applied, apply now. Apply now. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Goodbye.